Hi everyone, it's Mike here with the small furry creature. So today I'm in the mood to put together a mixed media art tag using some of the Tim Holtz Botanicals die cuts, the Botanicals ephemera. Now I've had these kicking around for a while. I've also got a sheet of vintage style paper that I've had in my stash for a long time. Never did anything with it, so I just thought I would grab a few bits and pieces and see if I can put together a vintage styled botanical birdy flowery kind of art tag today, because this probably will be the last time I do a project in this room, because after this I'm dismantling the camera and moving my desk into the other room. What? So this is a piece of Cairn craft card that I'd started a project on and then kind of put to one side and never did anything with. I've taken one of the Perspex tags from my tag journal and I've drawn around it and then cut it out to create a craft tag, so that can now get put back onto the tag journal as its protective cover, and I've already marked out where the hole's going to be. So what I'm going to do, see, you can tell I've tried to use this sheet previously, so I'm going to take that sheet of vintage paper that I showed you earlier, and I'm going to glue it down onto the tag, and the bits that are left over I'm going to stick across here to kind of put together as a bit like a jigsaw, just so that the entire tag is covered with that craft paper. So I've already measured the line, so I've kind of already placed the bits and pieces on the tag, so I pretty much know already where things are going to go, so there's going to be no nasty surprises or anything like that. I think I'll stick it that way up. So I'm just going to grab my glue. It always ends up getting gummed up. Yeah. And these kind of art projects are really sort of not necessarily quick and easy to do, but they're quite effective, using products that other people have designed for specifically this purpose. Because let's face it, when Tim Holtz creates his papers, this is what he intends people to do with it. You know, they always, or he envisages people putting them together to create their own projects. So it's not cheating, that's what these things were designed for. So you don't necessarily have to create your own ephemera bits and that kind of stuff every single time, or create painted backgrounds every single time. It's really, you know, it's okay to use the resources that people have already created for you. They've done a lot of the hard work. So as we've only got that kind of bit up there, I'm just going to snip that off, so that all of the tag is covered. And then we can let that dry, and then we can trim it to size. So I'm going to leave that for a few minutes to set. Okay, the backing papers on the tag are now completely dry, and I've trimmed them out back to the shape of the tag, as you can see. So, and I want to add some kind of distress effect in the background, and to do that I'm going to use the Indigo Blue Fair portrait paint. This is a matte paint, and all I'm going to do is just take a little bit of water on my brush and just take a little bit of that paint, and I'm just going to drag it down to create some kind of whitewashy, streaky effect. Now that will blend everything back together. And of course you can always add a little bit more water if you want to thin it out to help unify the background. because when it dries it will die back a little bit, so it just gives it that kind of washed out, kind of warm feel over the top, like faded wallpaper. So some of those darker areas at the top there have just lightened up a little bit. So that will do for that. So I'm just going to grab the heat gun. So I could have done the same thing with white gesso, but I think the white gesso would have been a little bit too stark and a little bit too different for the tones that were already in that paper. So it turned out subtle, which is exactly the kind of thing that I wanted. So I'm just going to clean the mat and then I'll be right back. So everything's now tidy, and as you can see that's dried back, and you can see the colour in the background. It's not too in your face, so it is nice and subtle, which is exactly what I wanted. So I want to add in some stamping into this now, some background texture. So to do that I'm going to use this Tim Holtz for Stampers Anonymous Classics number 6. And these are the ones that I've kind of got some nice script or wordage embedded into some like border stamps. So I'm going to use this one here. Now because it's long and thin, I can use a rule as a stamp block. That way we can turn it and position it and just drop it down. And it doesn't have to be perfect. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly stamp all the way up. I'm taking it off the edge, like so. So we've got a little bit more detail, and I'm going to do it on both sides. And again, I'm going to take it off the edge. Which just creates a nice bit of texture into the background. I can now peel that off the rule and put it away. Because archival ink takes a little bit of time to dry, it doesn't dry immediately, I'm just going to give it a quick blast with the heat gun because I don't just want to be sitting around waiting for it to do that. Sorry, and I forgot to mention that I'm using the Potting Soil archival ink, which is like a dark brown. So that should now be dry. But while I've got that out, I can grab my ink blending foam and I can just add some of that and start darkening up the edges, adding in a little bit of vintage grunge just all the way around. That adds a nice kind of dark border and a frame to the tag. So I can pop that to one side and now bring in some of those elements that we want to add in. I'm going to do the same thing and go around the edges of all those, which will help to hide any bits where the die cutting hasn't been exactly wonderful, but also it helps to pull everything together if all the elements that you're adding onto your project have the same kind of background to them. So I'm also going to use this one. I'm not sure what kind of flower it is. But just to add in a little bit of that darkness all the way around, just helps to unify it. and it helps blend it all together. I've also got one of the butterflies from the Botanicals. Now this one did have a white border all the way around and it was a bit too much, so I have actually trimmed that out altogether. And then I'm just going to go around just to hide those white raw card edges. Okay, so we can now start, get rid of all those bits of fluff, to put our pieces together. So I'm going to be sticking that down around about there, but I want this to come out from underneath. So I want it just to come off the tag a little bit. So I want to go about there. So I can add my glue just to the back. I'm going to use the fine point of the Tombow for this, because that will allow me just to get some of that glue along there. A bit more precision than my other glue, which is why it's handy to have both. And then I can turn that over, drop it down, and then before I push it down I can reposition it just to make sure I've got it in the place where I want it. And that's just about it. So as you can see, that stamping adds a little bit more depth to the background. And then I want to position the butterfly. Now the butterfly is going to go on a dimensional pad because I want the wings lifted up. So I'm going to put that up there. So I have a little foam pad, which needs something. So I just need to take the foam pad and I can stick that on the back. Position the wings, and then I can drop that down just where I need it. So that gives us some nice dimension there. Now as you can see, look, these die cuts are quite shiny, which I don't particularly like, but it's part and parcel. So before I stick this down, you did see that I had some baker's twine that stuck to my Velcro side of one of the blending foams earlier. It wasn't there purely by accident. I did bring out the baker's twine because I wanted to use it, but I need to be very careful because it's got itself into a little bit of a knot. So I'm just going to try and tease out some of the baker's twine so that I can use it in the project without tying it into a great big knot, which I probably am going to fail miserably at doing. I don't particularly have small enough and delicate enough fingers to be able to tease this out fully. I've got big sausage fingers, so I'll do my best. I think actually that's going to be enough. I think probably, yeah, that will be enough. So I'll just snip that off. Okay, I'm just going to pop that to one side. I want to dirty and grunge this up. So I have got some ink on that blending foam, but I'm just going to add some more. And I'm going to just pull the string underneath just to grab some of that ink, and you can see it does start to darken it up, which is cool. Oh, excuse me, I've just banged the camera. So that just adds a bit of grunge and dirt to that baker's twine. It's not quite as bright as it was when it was, as you can compare, a little bit darker. So I can now wrap the twine around a couple of times, and then I can tie it off. I'm not very good with bows. See if I can get that tight. There we go. And the beauty with doing it this way is that I can manoeuvre now that knot to wherever I want. So I pull that to one side, and then when we place our thing down, a little bit more texture. I'll see if I can tie another knot in there. Okay, that will do for the time being. So we have our main panel, and I've already used the foam pads and stuck some down on the back and removed the backing, so we're ready to stick that down over the top of our tag. So that's now in position. And then finally, or one of the final steps, I have one of the quote chips from Tim Holtz, which just simply says use your wings, which is kind of perfect for this. So I'm just going to grab my Tombow glue, just add a little bit on. Oh, and you may have already noticed that I've just quickly run round using my ink blending foam with that potting soil just to grunge up the edges as well, just to kind of tie everything together. And I'm actually going to stick this on top of here. So I'm going to put it just there. Hopefully getting that straight. Cool. So I'm now going to just leave that to dry for a few minutes, and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to deal with that shine from those panels, because I really don't like it. So once that's dry, I'll be right back with my remedy. Okay, so now that that wings chip has had a time to settle and dry, I'm going to try and get rid of this shine on the pieces, those botanical die cuts. Now the way that I'm going to do it is simply by bringing in some of the clear gesso. Now this clear gesso is the Finnabair Art Basics clear gesso. Now all I'm going to do is just take a little bit on my brush, and I'm literally just going to paint over the top. And I'm not particularly bothered about getting brush strokes or anything like that in the gesso, as long as it all gets a coating. Now of course it will dry completely clear, hence the clear gesso, but what it will do is it will stop the shine, and it doesn't matter whether you actually get any on the background either, because it will just dry matte and flat and not shiny in the slightest. And the beauty of this is you can go over it and dry it with your heat gun, and then later, if you've missed any, if it's still shiny, you can always go over it again. I'm also going to go over the butterfly too. So I've not gone mad, just done a thin coating. And if you want just to make sure that you've not got any at all, any shininess, then we should be able to. So that's the gesso you can see shining there. So as it dries, you'll start to see it going matte. And there you go, shine gone. So this entire panel is now matte, not shiny in the slightest. The butterfly no longer is shiny, and neither are the flowers in the background. All completely matte. The only little shine there is just there on the usual wings. I'm okay with that, but I could, if I wanted to, just go over that with a quick coat of that clear gesso as well, just to remove that shine from there. But that's my remedy for getting rid of shiny pieces of die cuts just like that. So that's it. That's all I'm going to do on this tag. Kind of simple. It's more of an assemblage piece than it is an actual mixed media piece, but because we've used paint and we've used clear gesso and we've used collage items, just because they've been die cut and mass produced doesn't mean you can't use them to create something which doesn't take long to do, but I think is still quite pleasant and nice to look at, and would make a nice gift if you were actually going to mount this and give it to someone. So that's it from me today. All I have to do is just punch a hole in the top there and add this into my mixed media tag journal. So hope you've enjoyed that. If you have, please remember to give it a thumbs up, share the video with your friends, and if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, you can do so by clicking the button at the end of the video. That's all from me for now. I will see you all again real soon. Bye for now. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to all of my angels, because without you, these videos would not be possible.